Welcome to the Gracepoint Church Weekend Experience Online. I'm Pastor Caesar, and I just love when you and I get a chance to hang out together on the weekend. Here at Gracepoint, we do everything that we do out of a deep commitment to our mission, which is to meet people where they are and to inspire them to follow Jesus. And that's why I know that no matter where you are in your faith journey, you're going to find it very comfortable and you're going to feel really at home here at Gracepoint. Well, it is Father's Day weekend. I cannot believe it. If you're watching us live on Saturday at 4 o'clock, then guess what? It is not too late. Tomorrow is Father's Day. And so you still have time to go out and get a gift or do something for the father in your life. So don't forget, tomorrow is Father's Day, and we just are going to be here after our service, our live service today. We are going to be here and we're going to celebrate our fathers. I hope that you'll celebrate the father in your life too. One thing I want to talk about, I want to put this on your calendar because it is coming up faster than we can think about it. But the end of July, every year, we always celebrate Christmas in July. It has become a tradition here at Gracepoint. But this year, it's even more special because not only is it Christmas in July, but it is also our 10-year anniversary. That's right, 10 years of loving, serving, and giving to this community here in South San Francisco and all throughout the North Peninsula here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are so honored that God has just seen fit to be with us and to bless us and give us these opportunities where we're able to bless others right here in our community. We're going to celebrate 10 years. That's going to be a whole weekend of events for us. There's going to be a Friday evening event, our regular Saturday afternoon service, and then our Christmas in July party, our annual Christmas in July party. And then there's even something going on, a community service event on Sunday. It's all going to be up on the website soon. But I wanted you to go ahead and put it on your calendar to make sure that you are here to celebrate with us. We are in our series Nemesis. We got started last week with an introduction, but today we're actually going to be talking about our first villain, Nemesis, villains of the Bible. Over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be talking about villains, and so we're glad that you are here for that. We always like to do a fun summer series, and this is going to be our fun summer series for this year. And because it's our summer series, it also means that Summer Movie Ticket Saturdays are back. That's right, every summer we do Summer Movie Ticket Saturdays, and that means for this entire series, all throughout Nemesis, if you bring a person who has never been here before, their first time here, then they are going to get a movie pack and a free movie ticket. And if you invite somebody, then you also get a free movie ticket. And so it's just something that we like to do to say thank you. We know that a lot of people are out doing stuff on the summer, so if you come and hang out with us for the first time, we'd like to thank you by giving you one of those summer movie tickets. We're about to get started, but before we do, we always like to start our time together in a time of worship in music. And here at Gracepoint, we invite everybody to worship however it is you feel comfortable. So if you want to sing along with us, we're going to put the words up on the screen so we can all sing it together out loud. But if you prefer to just sit quietly and meditate on the lyrics and the music or anything in between, you have freedom here. You're welcome to worship, but let's worship together now.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Jesus, the name other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful.
Haman. From about 483 BC to about 473 BC, I served as the prime minister of the First Persian Empire. And I was invited here today to tell you my story. I was prime minister at the height of the empire, and our empire was very unique in its time. It was very multi-ethnic. We had a lot of different people groups all living together under the empire. There were people from different ethnicities, different nationalities, different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, but we all lived together, and it was mostly a peaceful time. In fact, our empire would be known throughout history for being the first to put into place a large bureaucracy that spread across the empire. We provided extensive and expensive civil services to all of our citizens. And we had a very large standing army. And for the most part, because of our strength, we kept the peace. In fact, from what I understand, it is a time that was very similar to the time that you live in today. Now, my name, Haman, it means magnificent. And it comes from this word. It means magnificent, but it comes from this word that also means noisy, like the kind of noise that you get when there's like a crowd of people, a crowd so big that there's just this noise from the crowd that is so loud that you can't even hear yourself think. So I'm not sure why my father named me Haman, why he gave me this name. I mean, I'm sure that every dad wants to think that their son is going to grow up to be magnificent. But I don't understand. There's a lot of words that mean magnificent. Why did he also put this kind of undertone of magnificent that also meant noisy? But that's what he named me. And so I don't know if it was because of my name, but for as long as I remember, I wanted to be magnificent. Even as a child, I knew I was going to grow up and I wanted to be great. And one day, my life changed. At the time, my king's name was Ahasuerus, but you probably know him today by his Aramaic name, King Xerxes. One day, King Xerxes calls me into his palace. I didn't know why. But he called me in and he named me, of all people, he named me to be his prime minister, to be the most noble of all his noble officials, to be in command of everything, second only to the king. There would be no one greater in all of the empire except for the king. I couldn't believe it. Some people thought it was my ambition that got me there. Some people thought it was fate. Some people said it was because of the favor of the gods. Today I know that there's probably a lot of you who would say that it was because of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was the reason why I was put into that position. But for whatever reason that it was, I found myself there. I found myself in the highest position in the land, in the place of high honor, highest honor. In fact, the king himself said that I deserved such honor that he made a decree, an order from the king, and said that wherever I go, all of his noble officials, no matter how high they were, no matter how powerful they were, that when they saw me, that they would bow down and pay me respect. Now, I'm not talking about the polite little bows that I see people doing today. When you would bow down and pay respect, in my time, you were on your knees, face on the ground, bowing down and showing respect. And everybody did it. And I have to admit, at first it seemed a little overkill, like, really? This much? But then I thought, you know what? If the king ordered it, then I must deserve it. So wherever I was, wherever I went, people would bow down. The highest officials, the wealthiest, the most influential, the most powerful people in all of the empire. When they saw me, they would be on their knees, face on the ground, bowing down, showing me respect. Well, everyone, that is, except for this one guy, Mordecai. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know what was wrong with this guy Mordecai. He saw everyone else bowing down to me, paying me respect, but he wouldn't do it. And I thought, well, who is this guy? It was annoying. But I just let it go. It wasn't that big of a deal. See, the problem was that it wasn't just me that was seeing this. It wasn't just me that was noticing this. You see, the palace guards started to notice that when I was there and walking around, people would be bowing down and showing me respect, but Mordecai wouldn't do it. He just stood there and watched. So one day the guards asked him. They went up and talked to him and they said, hey, Mordecai, why are you disobeying the king? Mordecai's like, what do you mean? And they said, well, you're not bowing down when Haman walks by. And Mordecai's like, yeah, and? They said, well, you're supposed to bow down when Haman walks by. That was an order of the king. And he says, yeah, and? Well, why aren't you doing it? And Mordecai says to them, listen, I am a Jew. And I serve the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And there is no other God that I would serve other than my God. And I would not bow down to any other God except for my God. And if I'm not going to bow down to any other God, there's certainly I'm not going to bow down to just a man. Guards kind of shook their head. You know, what are you going to do? I found out later that the guards had the same conversation with him day after day. They'd ask him over and over again, Mordecai, why are you doing this? And it would be the same result day after day. Well, one day the guards came to me and they told me about this conversation that they had with Mordecai over and over again. And they told me why Mordecai wouldn't bow down and pay respect to me the way that everyone else was. And I have to tell you, when they were telling me, it filled me with rage. I was furious. I couldn't believe it. Who does this Mordecai think he is? The king himself ordered the people to bow down and pay me respect. Why wouldn't this guy do it? Listen, I know it wasn't just the insult. It wasn't just that he was doing it and not doing it, not bowing down to me. It wasn't just that, but it was also the embarrassment. I mean, the guards noticed it. And if the guards noticed it, the other nobles noticed it, people would notice it. And I wondered, now, what if they're just laughing at me now, right? What if they're laughing at me because despite all this power that I'm supposed to have, I can't get this one guy to bow down to me? And now it's just humiliating. All because of this stupid Mordecai. And listen, in that moment, I just thought to myself, I've got to do something about this. I've got to get back at that Mordecai. I can't just do nothing. I have to show this guy who he's messing with. I have to show this guy who I am and what happens when you don't pay me the respect that I deserve. I have to show this guy, he can't take advantage of me. He can't treat me like a punk. He can't just ignore me. I have to get back at him. And so I thought, what am I going to do to get back at him? Now, you know what that feels like, right? I mean, I know you live in a different time, and a lot of you think, well, you're more evolved now, you know. But listen, I have watched your YouTube, and I have seen these images of you guys when you get your road rage and someone does something that insults you, and then now you go after them and you're attacking them and you're killing them, you're even shooting at them just because they did something to insult you while they were in their car. I know you guys understand what I feel like. And that's when I learned my first lesson in all this. Lesson number 1. It's the insignificant things that can destroy you. It's the little things. Because looking back, I shouldn't have cared about Mordecai. I mean, who was he? I was second only to the king. I shouldn't have cared about him. He was just one guy. They wouldn't even let him in the palace anymore because he wouldn't show me respect. I should have just let it go. He wasn't anyone important. But I was so angry. I just thought, he has to understand who I am. He can't treat me that way. Just looking back, I see my heart wasn't right. I know it now. My heart wasn't right. And when your heart isn't right, it isn't the big things that trip you up. When your heart isn't right, it's the little things that trip you up. This was a little thing, and it tripped me up. I let the silence of Mordecai at the gate be louder in my mind than the sound of the trumpets inside the palace. I was blinded. But I was so mad, and it was all I could think about. Revenge was all I could think about. And I even thought to myself, you know what? Punishing just this Mordecai wasn't enough. Taking his life alone would not make up for the huge insult that he gave to me by not bowing down to me. His life was too insignificant to make up for the offense that he did against me. In fact, I even thought, if I just got rid of Mordecai, they'd send somebody else to represent his people. And that guy would probably do the same thing. It would be an endless cycle. No, the only way to fix this, I thought in my mind, the only way to solve this problem was not to just get rid of Mordecai, but to get rid of all of his people, all of them, not just in the capital, but all of Mordecai's people everywhere. They all had to go. That would do it. That would solve my problem. I know what you're thinking. This guy's crazy. I'd never do anything like that. I know you're thinking that, but listen. Even though you think that you would never get mad at one person or get mad at a small group of people and then want to get rid of all of them, but I've watched your news. I've watched your televisions. And listen, I don't know what a Republican is, but I know that there are a lot of people who saying, because of what a couple of them said, we want to get rid of all of them. I don't know what a Democrat is, but I've heard some people say that because of what a few of them did, we got to get rid of all of them. So I know that you guys understand what I felt like. I was so blinded by my outrage that I wasn't thinking clearly. All I could think of was getting revenge on this guy Mordecai, because of the insult that he gave me. And then I thought about this. Sure, I could kill Mordecai. I've got that power. I could kill Mordecai. I could kill his whole family. In fact, I could kill all of his people in the capital city. I could do that. I have the power to do that. But to kill all of them everywhere, all throughout the empire, I'm going to need a little more power to do that. I can't do that on my own. I'm going to need the power of the king. So I actually went to the king. But see, I realized I couldn't tell the king like the whole story. I couldn't tell the king, listen, this one guy insulted me, and so now I want to kill all of his people everywhere. I mean, that doesn't make Mordecai look bad. That makes me look bad. It makes me look silly. It makes me look petty. It makes me look stupid. But I still wanted to do it. So I knew I had to be careful about what I said to the king. So I went to the king and I said, listen, King Xerxes, there's this race of people that are scattered all throughout your empire. That part was true. And these people, king, they have laws that are different from any other people. That was also true. And they refuse to obey the laws of the king. Okay, listen. That was a little bit of a stretch, right? It was just this one guy. But since they're all the same anyway, it really doesn't matter, right? So it kind of was the truth. And I said to the king, I just don't think that it's a good thing, oh great and glorious King Xerxes, to tolerate these people. And I could see the king's face. He was thinking about this, but I wasn't sure if he was buying what I was selling. I knew I had to sweeten the pot a little bit. So I say to him, listen, I said, and if it pleases the king, if you will issue a decree that they all be destroyed, you know what I'm going to do, king? I am going to give to the king's treasury 10,000 talents of silver. I'm going to give it to the king's treasury. Now, listen, I had a lot of money, but 10,000 talents was a lot of money even for me. Back then, a talent was approximately 1 year's wages for an average person. And I was telling the king I was going to give him 10,000 talents of silver. The weight of that is about 375 tons of silver. Do you know how much that is in your dollars today? It's $265 billion is what I pledged to the king. If he would just let me kill Mordecai and all his people. And that brings me to lesson number 2. The drive to get even will let you justify even your worst behaviors. I thought I was doing the right thing. And listen, that did it. I said this to the king. I offered him this money, and the king agreed. In fact, to confirm his decision, do you know what he did? He gave me his signet ring. He gave it to me. I put it on my finger, and now I had the authority of the king. I had the authority of the king. Not only that, he said, you can take that 10,000 talents and you can use it to do whatever you need to do in order to fulfill that decree and to do what you said to do. Boy, that had to rival one of the best days of my life, because now I had the authority of the king. Me, Haman, son of Hammedatha. Me, Haman, enemy of the Jews. That was me. And I thought, this'll teach Mordecai. Now he'll understand. So on April 17, a very specific date, because I needed to know exactly what date it was, but on April 17th, the king called together his secretaries and his scribes, and they wrote out the king's decree exactly as I described it to them. Wrote it all out. And because I had the king's signet ring, I stamped it. I didn't need the king's approval. I stamped it and put his seal on it, and it went out. The king's fastest messengers went out to all of the officials, to all of the governors of all of the provinces everywhere, and they put out this decree that on March 17th of the next year, all of Mordecai's people, all of the Jewish people throughout the empire, on one day, we would slaughter them all. Young, old, men, women, children, all of them. March of 7th of the next year, that's when it would happen. Not only that, I said in the decree that if anyone was to kill one of Mordecai's people, was to kill one of the Jewish people, not only would they have the satisfaction of obeying my decree, but whatever that person owned would become theirs. They would get it. That'll make everybody want to participate. That was it. It would be their payment for a job well done. And it went out all throughout the empire. And Mordecai heard about it. And when Mordecai heard about it, he flipped out. I mean, dude went crazy. He tore his clothes. He got some old potato sacks and put them on him. He spread ashes all over his body, and he walked around the city crying and wailing. And everyone looking at him. It was hilarious, and I loved it. In fact, as the news of the king's decree spread all throughout the empire, Mordecai's people, not just in the capital, but all throughout the empire, were tearing their clothes, were putting on potato sacks, putting ashes all over their body. And they were fasting, and they were praying to their God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And I got to tell you, when I saw all of this unfolding, I was so happy. Mordecai was feeling my plan of revenge, and I thought to myself, now he'll understand. A little while later, some of the king's messengers came to my house, and they gave me an invitation, a special invitation to a special banquet that the king was having in the palace. In fact, it was a banquet being thrown by the queen, and the only guests were the king, the queen, and me. That is how exclusive this banquet was. And I was thinking to myself, that is awesome. I can't believe it. What an honor. I'm going to get to dine with just the king and the queen. I mean, I sent my robes out to the dry cleaners. I went to the sandal shine guy, and I had my sandals shined. And that night I went to the party, to the banquet. And it was amazing. The music, the food, the wine. It was a perfect evening. I loved it. Everything was perfect until I was leaving the palace at the end of the night. And as I walked outside the palace to go back to my home, guess who was at the gate? That stupid Mordecai, just sitting there. Not standing or bowing down out of respect for me. No, he was just sitting there. Not looking remorseful, not looking fearful, just looking at me. Sitting there. I felt like he was mocking me. I felt like he was judging me. But there he was. And I was so mad, I didn't know what to do. I went home that night and I decided, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw a party. I invited all of my friends. My wife was there. They all came to my house. We had a full spread of food. And I couldn't help myself. I hadn't seen my friends in a while. So I talked to them about all the money I had. Told them how rich I was. Told them about how many kids I had. It's not like today. Back then, the more kids you had, it meant the more powerful you were. The longer your line was going to go on. I was just telling them how many kids I had. They were like, whoa, that's a lot of kids. And then I told them about the honor that the king gave me. The honor of being second in command. The honor of holding the king's signet ring. The honor of the order of the king telling everyone that they had to bow down and pay respect to me wherever I was. Yeah, I showed off a little bit. I told them about the banquet that they held that was just for the king, the queen, and me. And that there was going to be another banquet. The queen said there's going to be another banquet the next night that I was going to get to go to. But my friends, they knew me. My wife, she knew me. And she saw, even though I was talking about all these amazing things that were happening in my life, that there was still something wrong. So they asked me, hey, what's going on? You should be happier than this. And I told them about Mordecai. I told them about this guy and his disrespect for me. And so that was the topic of conversation for the rest of the night. What are we going to do? And they had this great idea. You see, back then, one of the ways that they would kill people is that they would get a sharp pole and they would impale them up through their gut, up inside, and then hang them on that pole until they died. I know it's kind of gross, but that was what they did back then. So my wife and my friends, they came up with this great idea that I was going to make a pole, except this pole was going to be 75 feet long. Usually they're only about 10, 12 feet. They said, make one that's 75 feet long, and here's the reason why. You see, from my house to the king's palace, there was you had to climb a mountain up. It was elevated probably about 50 feet. So if you made that pole 75 feet, and you hung Mordecai on it, then even while you're at the palace, dining with the king and the queen, you could look out the window and see Mordecai hanging. And then you'll be happy. That was what was going to make you happy. And I thought to myself, that's perfect. Now, instead of seeing Mordecai's face when I'm going through the gate or when I'm coming out of the gate, I'm going to see Mordecai hanging on that pole. I'm going to be eating and drinking with the king and the queen, and I'll see that Mordecai is out there paying the price. I'll see him hanging from that pole, and then I'll know. And now he'll understand. So the next day I get to the palace, right? I get there earlier in the day in the morning, and I didn't know what was happening, but the king apparently calls me in. He sends his messengers out to call me into the palace. So I'm in the palace. And before I could ask the king my favor, because I knew I had to ask the king for permission to kill Mordecai, before I could ask the king says to me, he says, Haman, what should a king do to honor someone who truly pleases him? And I got to tell you, when I heard that, I was thinking to myself, wow, I have truly pleased the king? I couldn't believe it. This is more than I ever dreamed. I have done so much for the king that now he wants to honor me. And so I said to the king, listen, king, if you want to honor someone, the king wants to honor someone, this is what I would do. I would take a royal robe, one that the king has worn, and put it on him. I would get a royal horse, one that has the seal, the emblem of the king on his head, a horse that the king has ridden, and put him on that horse wearing the king's robe. And then I would get the most noble of officials to take the robe and to take the horse and to guide this person all throughout the city and shouting, this is what the king does for someone he wishes to honor. That's what I told the king. And I thought, this is really happening. This is really happening. And as I ride out of the palace on that horse wearing the king's robe, Mordecai would see me. And as I rode back in, Mordecai would see me and he would hear the king's decree being shouted by one of the most noble officials in the land. This is how the king honors someone who pleases him. And that when that Mordecai sees me and when he hears that, now he'll understand. Well, the king looked at me and he said, excellent. Now, take the robes and take the horse and do just as you said. And I thought, this is it. I got to call my wife. I got to call the kids. I got to get the photographer out here. This is it. The king says, take the robes and take the horse and do just as you said for Mordecai the Jew. And I was like, wait, what? For Mordecai the Jew? The king says, leave nothing out that you suggested. And my heart sank. Like, how is this happening to me? You see, I didn't know that the night before, the king couldn't sleep. So he called out for some of his historians to read some of the history of his kingdom. And they came upon this passage where the king was reminded that Mordecai the Jew had actually helped to thwart a plan where some assassins were going to come and assassinate the king, and Mordecai stopped it. And so I didn't know that all this time, throughout all that questioning, that the king wasn't thinking about me. He was thinking about Mordecai. So when I made all those suggestions that I thought was going to be coming to me, The king was thinking, I'm going to do that for Mordecai, and now I have no choice. I'm the one who's going to have to lead Mordecai through the streets, saying this is what the king does for someone he wishes to honor. I had to do it. So I led Mordecai through the streets, yelling, this is what the king does for someone he wishes to honor. At the end of the day, I went home, told my wife what happened. She said, well, look, now that the king has honored Mordecai, you can't kill him anymore. I knew she was right. Didn't want to tell her that, but I knew she was right. And I thought to myself, no. Maybe I can't kill him tonight. Maybe I can't kill him tomorrow. But I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to make it happen. You know, what I should have done was I should have listened to my wife. I should have found a way to just cancel my plans or to change my plans or maybe even confess to the king. I should have found a way to do something else, but I was still blinded by my anger and my rage. And now my frustration and my humiliation. So that night I went to the banquet that was still just for me and the king and the queen. And this is where it gets tricky because there were a couple of other things that I didn't know. First of all, I didn't know that Mordecai had a cousin. She was very beautiful. She was a beautiful young lady, and I didn't know that this beautiful young lady was orphaned as a child and that Mordecai had raised her, and so Mordecai and his cousin were very, very close. I didn't know that. The second thing I didn't know was that Mordecai's cousin, Esther, was Queen Esther, the wife of the king. Can you believe this? I mean, the odds of that. Mordecai's cousin was the queen. And I didn't realize that all this time, all of the things that I was doing, Queen Esther was telling Mordecai about all the things that I was doing. Everything that I was planning, Mordecai knew because of Queen Esther. And I didn't know that all this time, Queen Esther had been fasting and praying to their God. And Mordecai had been fasting and praying to their God. And all of Mordecai's people who were in the capital city were fasting and praying to their God. And all of the people, all of his people, all throughout the empire were fasting and praying to their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I didn't know. I didn't know they were fasting to their God, that one of their ancient kings would write, "You have turned my mourning into dancing. You have taken off my sackcloth." You know, those potato sacks that they're wearing. "You have taken off my sackcloth and clothed me in joy." I didn't know that this was the God that one of their wisest kings said, that pride goes before destruction and haughtiness before a fall. And yes, that was me. My pride was leading me to my destruction, and looking back, I could see it so clearly. Looking back, I could see how their God intervened in Mordecai's story, intervened in Esther's story. I can see it clearly now. I can see how their God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, put Mordecai there and brought Mordecai to the attention of the king. I can see how God put Queen Esther in the place that she needed to be so that she would become queen, so that she would be in the house of the king. I can see how God responded to the prayer and fasting of his people. And it didn't matter that if I put all of my money and all of my influence and all of my power and all of my intellect, everything that I had was useless against the God who loved his people. And now I see why Mordecai wouldn't bow down to me. Why he wouldn't bow down to a man. Why would you bow down to a man if you were serving a God like the God of Mordecai and the God of Esther? And looking back now, I see that there were so many opportunities for me to change my thinking, for me to change my plans, to change my mind, to change my heart, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't think about anything except getting even. That was the only thing that was going to make me feel better, was getting even with Mordecai. And I missed it all, no matter how hard I tried. The plans of their God. That's what happened. Listen, I got to leave here now. I've got to go back to the palace. You see, later that night, that night of the second banquet, I didn't know this, but the queen had planned to tell the king while I was there at the banquet about all my plans, and she did it. She told him all the plans that I had. The plans that I had to kill Mordecai's people everywhere. And because she was Mordecai's cousin, she was one of Mordecai's people. And so my plan would kill her, and the king just flipped out. He was so mad. He stormed out of the banquet hall. He was so mad. And I knew I was in trouble. So I just threw myself at Queen Esther's feet right there in the banquet hall, and I begged her for mercy. The problem was that when I threw myself at Queen Esther's feet, it was at the same exact moment, this is my bad luck here, right? The same exact moment that the king walks back into the banquet hall, I'm throwing myself at Queen Esther's feet, and the king thinks that I'm trying to make a move on the queen. And he was furious. He was so angry that he ordered me sentenced to death. Not only that, he ordered me to be sentenced to death, to be impaled on the same pole that I had built for Mordecai. And maybe this is why King David, that king of Mordecai's people, wrote this. He said, "The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands." When all you can think about is revenge, you're blinded by everything else. When you think that you're the only one who is able to make things right, you can't see anything else. And now I know that no matter how powerful the person, the force, the country, the nation, the bureaucracy, no matter what it is that comes against you, when the God of Mordecai, when the God of Esther, when the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob is on your side, they'll never win. And so Mordecai is going to live, and I am not. And now, I understand.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held